Welcome to everybody, and thank you very much for the evening. And it's my privilege to introduce Dr. Avinash Gupta. Dr. Gupta is the Chief of Cardiology at Amut Medical Center, South Campus in Lakewood, New Jersey. And he is a board certified cardiologist and a nuclear medicine as well as lipidology. And Dr. Gupta also president of MOCAPI, the chapter in New Jersey, and he's also very philanthropic, and he actually is one of the board member or of the temple in New Jersey area, Siddhivinayak Temple, and gentlemen, and I would love to meet all the time Dr. Gupta. Dr. Gupta, please welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President of API, Dr. Sudhakar Jonal Gadda, and thank you, API, for giving me this opportunity to be the moderator of this very important topic today, the heart of India. This topic is especially very close to my heart because I have lost so many friends, colleagues, and family members to this premature cardiac disease in Indians. Actually, the Europeans are very high risk of having strokes, and Americans are very high risk of having heart attacks, but they have risk factors. But Indians get heart attacks and strokes both without having any risk factors. But of course, when we dig deeper, we do find it. And you all will be surprised to know that 25% of heart attacks in Indians happen below age 40. And 50% of heart attacks have already happened before age 50. So we have to start early and we have to learn. Even if we don't have high blood pressure, diabetes, or we don't smoke, but still we are susceptible, people from that subcontinent. So I'm looking forward to this talk by Dr. Kaushik Reddy, who is Director of Interventional Cardiology, James A. Healy VA Medical Center. He is Director and Treasurer and founding co-chair of VHA Department of Defense Member Interest Group and founding co-chair of Cardiology Member Interest Group, American College of Lifestyle Medicine, founder and president of Plant-Based Lifestyle Movement. So without further ado, I would invite Dr. Reddy to tell us about the heart of India. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta, and thank you to the API leadership to honoring my request and accommodating this presentation in such a short notice. So given in the interest of time, I want to get right in. Once again, a quick word of thanks to all the leaders at API, and thank you, Dr. Gupta, for giving, for kind words of introduction. So I am an interventional cardiologist, and for, this is a group of physicians. I don't need to kind of introduce you to what interventional cardiology is, but, I went to school in India, I went to school in Hyderabad, came here, almost 27, 28 years ago now. But if one were to go to med school and training in American system, it's about 16, 17 years of uninterrupted training after high school to become an interventional cardiologist in the US system. So why do people go through all of this? And the likes of me, mostly I spend my time training, career, professionally speaking, in the deep dark dungeons of a lead-shielded cardiac cath lab. So it's unlike someone like myself to step out of the cardiac cath lab and make a humble plea to colleagues, to patients, friends, and societies at large, across US, India, and the world, to enable them and empower people not to meet me in the cardiac cath lab. I wrote a long essay about it, and I titled my essay, and I'm sorry I didn't put the link on this, but the title of my essay was published. It's titled "I Have a Carrot and a Stent to Pick." So that's my mindset, and I make a humble plea with my patients literally on a daily basis. You rather meet me in a garden or a ballpark or having fun and not laying half naked. I'm shoving a piece of metal into your heart. So that's my basic mindset. And that being said, I am a 100% VA doctor. I have a university affiliation. I never worked a day outside. So I am, can call me a full public servant. That gives me a luxury of saying that I have no disclosures of any kind. And a presentation like this, just for completion's sake, this is purely for educational purposes. We're not forming any physician, patient relationship here. And the main objective of this talk, the way I would like to, at the end of this discussion, my objective is that somehow I would like for this PowerPoint to become a passion and a personal commitment. And if you perceive this discussion as a monotonous one-sided lecture, which I'm hoping it is not, I would like for that lecture to become a lifestyle change for you, your friends, your families, and your patients. So, it's a weekday election night. We should be, glued to the TV and drinking, some scotch, I guess, or having, at least some type of relaxation to get the tension off. But why are we meeting here? And because we all want to be healthy, because yes, all of us are physicians meeting here, but at the end of the day, we are just as human as any one of our patients, right? And that's why, both in India and America, the leading cause of death amongst cardiologists is heart disease. Right? Let that sink in for a second, right? So this is extremely important, because the concepts of lifestyle medicine, we have to live it. We have to live it. We have to feel it. We have to be it, to practice and impart it onto anybody else that is near and dear to our hearts, including our patients. But the bigger question is that we need to really ask ourselves that what does health mean to us? And it's actually been well defined in the mid-40s by the World Health Organization that health is not just the mere absence of disease or infirmity, but the total presence of social, physical, mental. You may even extend this definition by saying spiritual well-being, right? And health is an inside job, because, if you take the English word unhealthy and break it down or break it apart for discussions like this, the word healthy can be looked at as heal thyself, as in the real act of healing. Meaning, again, I'm talking to a group of physicians. I don't need to explain to you the distinction between managing disease and maintaining health. Okay? Correct me if I'm wrong, but 90+% of what we do, including in primary care medicine, right, is we manage disease. We seldom get an opportunity to truly maintain people's health, right? And we can take the Sanskrit word or Hindi word for health, swasth, which actually literally in English, at least I have to break it apart because it's not the true conjugation. But in Sanskrit, it's actually a conjugation of swa, as in self. Ast means consciousness. The word health, swasth, is about being self-aware, right? And that makes it's a personal responsibility. And at least speaking for the American society, this statement, very powerful and in a way hurtful, is from 1975 in Chicago, that the idea of preventive medicine is faintly un-American. It means first recognizing that the enemy is actually us. These words were written down in 1975, but what saddens me, because we all live here now as Indian gene pool, so it's equally, if not more, true and aptly applicable in 2020, more so than in 1975. So the question that, usually, when I do this to a live audience, I ask people to stand up and answer this question. But the question that I never asked up until very recently, like literally, no, I'm not going to put any one of you on the spot here, but take a moment after, sometime, later tonight or tomorrow, and ask, did any one of you ever ask this question? Take a minute or two and say, why do I want to be healthy? Right? But no matter how descriptive those answers are, or how verbose and how detailed those answers are, all of our answers will fall into two broad categories. There's no third category why we want to be healthy. Right? All of our reasons will fall into these two broad categories, because we want to maintain a good quality of life and live as long as possible. Although here in this slide, I'm showing these two important entities as two separate boxes, but especially for those of all of us of Indian ancestry, the idea of life being a circle is not foreign. So these two entities are a circle, like a two sides of a coin. They're intricately related and inseparable. So what I would like to do is that I would like to take you through a quick journey using a graph, plotting quality of life against longevity through a century of journey. In America, I rearranged a slide for Indian numbers. in 1920, may not be applicable to us living in India, but if we were to be living in India no matter where we were, in 1920, an average Indian died at 29. And during those short years of life, if you draw a line bit across quality of life and longevity, it looked like a triangle, because quality of life at birth also was not at very high, because they did not have access to anything that we take for granted. And the quality of life dwindled very quickly for the exact same reasons. Public sanitation, clean drinking water, access to primary care doctor, lack of vaccination, right? All of this. Now, within a very short time, within 100 years, never in human history has this ever been recorded, that life expectancy of an average human being almost doubled, if not more. This is for India. US numbers are a little different. I had to rearrange this slide for the RP talk. But the slope of our future is very convoluted, right? It is kind of a no shape under the curve. And the reason this is that very early on, people are gaining weight. Very early on, people are developing hypertension. You tell me, talk to our families, friends, folks back home. It's difficult, if not near impossible, to come across an Indian household where the man and the woman are close to 50 and somebody is not taking a blood pressure medication. Same thing with diabetes. India is now officially the world's capital. ED, India is also the world's capital of ED in terms of per capita. Male erectile dysfunction is 40% at age 40 in here. It's almost 50% at age 40 in India. CVD is, like Dr. Gupta mentioned in his introductory remarks, is one of the most common, if not the common killer. And then chronic kidney disease is on the rise like we have never seen before. And then people are going on hemodialysis. So because of all of this, yes, we are living longer, folks, but we're also dying longer. We're also dying longer. And then there's a cancer or two. So because of what we all do, we manage this. And this is what I meant earlier when I said we are managing disease. And sometimes I joke with my trainees, residents, fellows, and med students, is that, do the letters next to our name, MD, did we perfect the art of prolonging disease and misery? And hence, should MD be rephrased as manager of disease? So what I argue is this, is now that we mastered two things, even in the era of COVID, we mastered two things that killed humanity for as long as we existed on this planet. Those two things are infection and famine. Very few people on the planet die due to famine today. Yes, there's still some people who are dying because of lack of food, but very, very few. And same thing with infection. But these two used to be the leading causes for as long as humans, evolved and existed on this planet. So we have a luxury of not dying of those two things, and yet we are dying of things, diseases that should not even exist for the most part. So what I argue is that why not at least live a life? So when I speak like this, people often ask me, well, Kaushik, you speak like you're never going to die. And I joke and say, well, that's the whole idea. What's wrong in trying, right? I'm not afraid of dying, right? My effort is that I just don't want it to be my fault. So why not at least make a sincere effort to live a long life and die short? So now, look at the graph. From a triangle, it looks like a box. So social anthropologists, I did not invent this, by the way. So this is an age-old concept. It's a social anthropologist called this the rectangularization of life. Because one day or later, no matter how hard we try, we're all going to end up in a box. So that's kind of my introductory spiel. So let's get into the little bit of details. Turn of the century, India now has a lot of this data is from a couple of groups from All India Institute of Medicine, like the major institutes in India, be it JIPMER, PGI, and AIMS. So turn of the century, now India, leading cause of death is cardiovascular disease. And an average Indian is dying or getting diagnosed with cardiovascular disease 10 years earlier than the rest of the human race. And CVD deaths before age 70, 23% in the Western world, 52% in India, right? And per every case, the case fatality also tends to be much higher, almost in some cases double. And this data was published actually by Dr. Salim Yusuf in New England Journal of Medicine a few years ago, recently, about 5-6 years ago. And huge epidemiological shift. I left India in 1994, and not that long ago, but tremendous shift. There have been a significant drop in mortality due to malnutrition and infection, like I was saying a few slides ago. And as a consequence of that, the life expectancy has gone up. Also, affluence has gone up slightly, especially at least in the past 20 years. Because when I go to India, I am the poor man in the family now. But and the dietary patterns and lifestyle have significantly shifted in a very, very, very short time. And as a consequence, 50% of non-communicable, 50% of deaths in India now are due to actually more non-communicable diseases. And this is an older slide. And, we surpassed this in terms of, human cost was predicted to exceed $250 billion in India due to premature deaths, due to heart disease alone. And 25% of all deaths in India are due to cardiovascular disease. And if you look at per 100,000, India actually leads the global average. It exceeds the global average. And this is not, there's a perception that this is all only happening in the major cities, and all the villages are still the same way, when we left India and came here. And that's not true. If you really look at the percentage growth, it's actually shocking that how rapidly it's increasing in rural villages. There's been a 7-fold increase in rural areas in cardiovascular disease. And the absolute numbers from 2005 to 2015 in 10 years went up by 70%. And the prevalence of hypertension as a risk among people who are dying of cardiovascular disease is 138% increase of hypertension. Just one risk factor alone went up by 138%. Why is this? Despite all the other risk factors, an average Indian in India, probably true here also, because most of us, I accept my apology if I come across like I'm overgeneralizing, but most of us somehow or the other are still eating like what we eat, how we ate back home. On top of that, not to mention the Americanization of some of the Indian foods and American food. So why do we have such a big baggage of a burden? 30% of Indians in India still smoke. And I don't know the statistics of this, but that's why we just got a major bill passed in the US Congress, not the current one that's elected, the previous one. So we don't know what's going to happen to that. So it's by a couple of Indian senators and other people to look into this all in the Indian and South Asian diaspora of all these risk factors in the US. But, if you go to some states in the Northeast in India, close to 70% of people are smoking, and alarmingly increasing rates amongst youth. Hypertension, close to 30% that we know of. And my personal belief is that 30% is actually a tip of the iceberg. And it's expected to go to 230 million people in India will have hypertension by 2025. That's almost, few million, more than half US population. How about that? And diabetes, and I don't need to tell you, we all hear this, like it's gone up like shocking, at least in the past 10 to 15 years, doubled in urban areas, and it's quadrupled. Although the absolute numbers are low in our rural areas, they have quadrupled as a percentage delta. Close to 70 million people in India have diabetes, and over 100 million people by 2030. And 70 to 80 additional millions of people have pre-diabetes, and majority of them don't even know it, because 1 in 4 people with pre-diabetes don't know in the US with all the campaign that we do. And how about lipids as a risk factor? Only 20% of Indians actually have a normal lipid profile. Only 20%. 80% of Indians, no matter where we live, we have abnormal lipid profile. And obesity. And so our obesity pattern is very, very, uniquely different. Some of you may have heard this if you're into cardiology and metabolic health. The syndrome, somebody coined TOFI, TOFI. I don't have it written down here, but thin on the outside, fat on the inside, right? So that's one of the reasons, 25%, and it's rapidly increasing. 19% of our children in India are obese. Right? And BMI tends to be a poorer metric, especially in Indians and South Asian gene pool. So better metric is to just a simple tape measure and measure height to waist ratio. Our waist should not exceed more than half of our height. No matter how much you can bench press and how many single-handed push-ups you can do, it doesn't matter. If your waist around the umbilicus measures more than half of your height, Basically, it's marker for metabolic syndrome, which is very, very, very common. And I call it Uncle Belly. Right? No pun. No, sorry if I'm offending any uncles, but it's kind of a joke. So a significant increase, and especially in women, by 2022, 50% of Indian women are expected to be overweight or obese. It's pretty much competing with the United States. And physical activity, 50% of the population is physically inactive. Less than 10% of the population is physically recreational and on a regular basis. I do actually belong to 2 running groups in India for just some nutritional counseling through WhatsApp, and it is picking up. It is picking up, but nowhere close to where we would like to in terms of organized regular physical activity. And the next risk factor is dietary pattern. It is one of the most shocking things I've noticed, because when I was a kid growing up in India, like most of us, we had families here who were visiting, and mom cooked at home and we had fun. But now when I go to India, nobody cooks at home. Everybody's ordering chicken biryanis, right? So fat intake has gone up like I never imagined possible, because these foods are not foreign to us. This is our, all of us eat regularly, right? 24 to 36% grams per day. That's the delta. That's not the absolute. That's a significant increase. Right? And most of those fats, unfortunately, are coming from hydrogenated fats and vegetable oils, enormous quantities. And meat intake has gone up, never imagined. Those of you listening to me who are my age or older know this. When we were kids, I'm 50 now. And those of, growing up in India, we ate any animal product maybe once a week, if lucky. That too, like small piece between a family of 4. And on top of that, refined carbohydrates. This is one of our biggest curse, I would say. Ultra processed refined carbohydrates. Even in a traditional Indian diet, they started showing up because, oblivious to me and most of you probably, pre-independence India, 60% of Indian crop grains were millets, not polished white rice. So culturally, polished white rice is only maybe 2 to 3 generations as a staple food. On top of that, 14,000 crore business of drinks that our parents, I think most of us would not have even recognized as drink when we were kids, except maybe Gold Spot when we were kids in India. And on top of our own refined carbohydrates, we just got introduced to all this Western junk. What could go wrong? How about our children, right? It's a very beautiful study. I really like showing this paper, is that researchers in India, actually India-based researcher, asked this question: what percentage of our children are consuming more than 4 times a week of these products that are perceived to be healthy? Unfortunately, more than 50% are drinking fruit juices. Don't drink fruit juices, people. Eat the fruit, right? Carbonated beverages. 21% of our children are drinking more than 4 times a week of carbonated beverages in India. Probably the same here. 18% with sweetened beverages, and 20% are eating more than 4 servings of ice cream a week. No wonder obesity is 90%. And how do all these risk factors? It's a beautiful paper for those of you, some of you, and again, if there's a cardiologist listening on the other end, Dr. Prabhakaran is a legendary cardiologist, works for AIMS, and also linked to the GBD project, the Global Burden of Disease project. So that's why they publish a lot of papers in highly prestigious cardiovascular journals. So if you look at the risk burden compared to the rest of all of them, literally every single one of them over the course of many, many years, India continues to be beating the rest of global population, right? I think I duplicated a slide here. But so how can we fix this? How can we fix this? Because at the end of the day, yes, we live here. In doing so, we probably increased our risk. And some of us probably not smoking as much as we, Indian counterparts do back home. But by, the stress of American life, some of eating the American way of Western diet, we probably, on top of our intrinsic genetic risk, did we potentially increase the risk? And if we did, how can we do it for ourselves? This is as much a self-care discussion as it is a discussion to take from here and pass it on to our own friends, patients, and family. So what are the pillars that we have? I don't need to disclose this to you. We don't have magic pills. We are not snake oil salespeople in medicine. We have these foundational pillars called the pillars of lifestyle medicine. Basically, except for having to pay for our food, if you really take a close look at the rest of the 6 pillars, every one of them is free and very Indian in origin. culturally speaking, ancient wisdom, if you want to call that, right? And to promote this as a scientific organization, we have an entity in America called the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I am a member. I'm one of the directors. I'm actually one of the executive committee members as a treasurer. And I did not know about this college 2 years ago. And one of the most transformative things that happened in my professional and personal life is to be a part of this organization and do my best to flip the pyramid, if you will, is to how healthcare is being perceived and practiced in this country. And 2 years ago, myself and a few of other, Indian doctors across America, we helped form a Indian Society of Lifestyle Medicine. I apologize again for not linking it here. It just popped in my head. Please look it up, Indian Society of Lifestyle Medicine. Send a message back home, and I'll definitely work with the API leadership to send that link to you. I should have done that. It just popped in my head. But it is a sister organization, by the way, of American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So please look this up and shoot me an email if there's anything I can do to help. And so why am I making the concept of lifestyle medicine as such a big issue? So if you look at I'm a cardiologist, right? So this is, again, the Salim Yusuf paper that I taught from Canada. So again, from all over the world, if you look at the risk factors that cause heart disease, which, by the way, is the leading cause of disease and death, both here in the US and back home. So every single one of these risk factors, smoking, a lifestyle factor. Diabetes, for the most part, when I say diabetes, I'm only referring to type 2 diabetes. For the most part, it is a lifestyle-related disease. Hypertension, for the most part, for almost exclusively, if not, because if you really look into the genetics of what actually contributes hypertension, it's very little. Same thing, hyperlipidemia, for the most part, lifestyle. And if you combine any 1, 2, 3, look at what happens to the odds ratio of risk. If you combine any 4, look at the risk. And you add obesity to it. But what we don't talk in medicine is the risk of psychosocial factors, the social determinants of health. We seldom do justice to this concept. But once you add it, if you really take a ruler and actually measure the delta in hazard ratios and odds ratios, it just skyrockets. So every single one of this, for the majority of cardiovascular disease, and by extension, for almost all common chronic diseases, are preventable, treatable, and even potentially reversible or be put into remission by using nothing but the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. And I would like to show the demonstration. I changed the slide format here, and don't ask me why, but it's a long story. So we have data now. This is impressive, thought-provoking data that, again, this is not an outcomes data, that you take 31 people and you put them on a 4 weeks of 100% well-balanced plant-based diet. Every single risk marker from a lipid profile, advanced lipid profile, including something that we talk a lot amongst Indian population about lipoprotein little a. There's no medication. Niacin does a little bit, but who uses niacin today, right? So 15% reduction, literally every single risk factor, lipid parameter gets better within short 4 weeks. And based on multiple meta-analysis, this actually made it to the guidelines in terms of predominantly a plant-based diet, a vegetarian diets should be and could be used as non-pharmaceutical measures. There you go, one of the most important risk factors. Another, portfolio dietary pattern. It's also a systematic review and a meta-analysis of all these trials clearly showed that a predominantly, if not exclusively, a whole food plant-based diet significantly lowers the lipid parameters. So much so it made it to the guidelines. For the lipid guidelines, the first thing that we do, again, we don't talk much about this when we counsel patients. The number one at the apex of the pyramid or the flow chart for 2019 lipid lowering guidelines is lifestyle. And this is the 2019-2020 primary prevention guidelines. If you look at the diet portion, except for a small amount of fish, the American College of Cardiology guidelines are predominantly, if not exclusively, a whole food plant-based diet. So inflammation, we talk a lot about inflammation. So somebody who works for the VA actually up in Manhattan, Benita Shah, she took about 400 patients, convinced 100 patients who are going for a cardiac cath, put them on a plant-based diet, and compared it to not some junk food standard American diet, but to a healthy American Heart Association diet. So compared to American Heart Association diet in people with cath established coronary disease, the markers for CRP went down by an additional 38% in 4 weeks of a randomized controlled trial where the meals were provided. Another interesting marker, some of you may have heard this, is called trimethylenamine oxide. It is a metabolite of choline. We don't know that some of the papers from the Mendelian randomization data are clearly showing that we don't know this. Is it a cause, or if, maybe it could be a reverse causation, but kind of look up this marker if you want to. We can pretty much do an entire talk on this, but TMAO is a marker, is a molecule that liver metabolizes choline, which again comes predominantly from animal products. Hypertension, we're going to spend some time on hypertension because it is literally the most common condition. And there's this notion both here in America and back home in India that aging somehow, it's a natural process, that as you age, high blood pressure, right? So much so that if you are age 45 without hypertension and you expect to live for another 40 years, your lifetime risk of becoming a hypertensive is close to 93%. That makes it look like, oh, maybe that's the normal. Turns out that's not true. We have known this from as far back as 1920s from sub-Saharan Africa and rural China, that those people who are eating literally leaves, greens, and roots, probably like our ancient rishis and gurus, and their blood pressure actually went down as they aged. So this and these concepts were proposed in the Western side of the world as early as in the 1940s by a guy named Walter Kempner, and they wouldn't publish his papers. And these were, 2014 republications where he clearly showed because there were no medications for hypertension in the 40s. And he clearly showed that retinopathy, cardiac silhouettes, left ventricular hypertrophy on an EKG would actually reverse and normalize. Right? And subsequently, if you fast forward that to another 40 years in the late 80s and early 90s, Dr. Frank Sachs, who's the doctor who was one of the lead researchers of the DASH diet, was the one who initially showed that vegetarian diets, people who eat vegetarian diets have the lowest prevalence of hypertension. Right? He showed 3 papers, and that's what led to putting together a proposal to do the DASH trial. Some of you may know this. It's one of those things that are written in concrete in medicine. It's one of those pretty impressive diet studies. But what is very interesting that a lot of people don't know is that the reason they provided to the National Institute of Health to make a diet design goal were to create patterns that would have the blood pressure lowering benefits of a vegetarian diet, yet contain enough animal products to make them palatable to non-vegetarians, right? So this to me is not scientific honesty, because why can't you just tell people that eat a vegetarian diet? But it is what it is. So the DASH diet came out, 459 people, and clearly showed that a diet that is plant predominant is the winner. And hence it made it to the guidelines. But if you really look at the subsequent data, again, some of you may know this, but some of you may find this shocking, but the number required to convince the FDA to approve a new blood pressure medication is to show that the blood pressure drops by 3 millimeters. That's it. If you go on a DASH diet, the blood pressure drops on an average by anywhere between 10 to 11 millimeters within 1 to 2 months of compliance. If you do a DASH diet with minimal added salt, it can drop by 20 millimeters. What I see in my practice for the past few years since I switched my own diet and researched and learned a lot about it, the patients of mine who actually do it sincerely and go on a 100% plant-based diet, on an average, the blood pressure drops by about 26 millimeters of mercury by the end of the month. And we're going to publish a lot of this next year. And this is the reason why DASH diet, there are very few things, literally less than 10% of cardiology guidelines, level 1, class 1 have a level of evidence A, literally less than, actually to be very precise, it's 8.9. And DASH diet is one of them. But we don't talk much about this. And this doesn't have to be Indian specific or Western specific. For the most part, this works. Same thing with type 2 diabetes. We have, again, I don't want to go into the details of every one of these trials, but we have enormous amount of data showing that type 2 diabetes is treatable, preventable, and potentially reversible. The 2020 ADA guidelines pretty much support all dietary patterns there is, which causes some confusion. But if you look at the top diets that they support, Mediterranean, vegetarian, vegan, Ornish, Pritikin, they also support paleo, they also support keto. Don't ask me why, but they do. It is in the 2019 guidelines. But if you look at majority of them, they're all plant-based or exclusively or predominantly plant-based. Ornish and Pritikin are the only ones that are actually supported and paid for by CMS as a part of intensive cardiac rehab. And American Association of Clinical Endocrinology, on the other hand, they go the extra mile. Their 2018 and 2020 guidelines clearly state that to prevent, treat, and potentially put diabetes, type 2 diabetes into remission, that they suggest that all patients primarily seek a plant-based meal plan, right? So here is that's the information, is right. I showed all risk factors: diabetes, obesity, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, smoking on the side can be changed, but just not even the other lifestyle factors, just the diet part only. So the question is, what do we eat, right? So this is the Canadian guidelines. They actually show food like this on the plates, right? And this is the US diet, which is the new guideline should be coming out. But the fundamental, Dr. Furman, I used to call him my mentor by proxy. He's a good friend and a colleague now. Health, right? That whole concept is not about losing weight and look like supermodels and fit into an outfit. Those things are immaterial. Is the foundational reason is health. From a nutrition point of view, should be simple. Like this, he calls it the Einstein's equivalency of nutrition. So, the E is equal to MC square's equivalency of nutrition science, where when written on a piece of paper, it's less than an inch long and works so beautifully that it is health equals nutrient density divided by the caloric density of the food, meaning that eat foods that are very high in nutrition, very low in caloric density. So no matter how you cut it, 99.9% of the time, those will end up being predominantly whole foods, plant-based diets. So a simple example is like this, if the goal is just to eat 500 calories, why not go into a pantry and drink 500 calories of 5 teaspoons of oil, right? You get your calories, but where is the nutritional value to it? So if you apply that same logic and go down this diagram, you will end up here. At least I ended up here. And I would like more for most of us, our patients, our friends and family to be, somewhere in this ballpark. And there's this notion when I say I'm a plant-based eater, people that the world thinks that this is what I eat, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then walk around, holding carrots. In reality, using these type of ingredients, which are one, very inexpensive, you can make foods like this, right? So, and this notion that food is medicine, am I proposing it for the first time? And the answer is no. These concepts have existed for, forever. So for us, both of these websites are established by good friends of mine. One in Canada this is specifically for plant-based diet Indian recipes. It's a wealth of resource. I'm going to pause here for a second for those of you, if you want to write them down, giftofhealth.org and plantbasedlosangeles.org. You can literally phenomenal, the foods that are completely 150%, all varieties of all areas of India. And here is the beauty. Those websites, especially giftofhealth.org by Arjun and Shobha, they're going to show you how to make some unbelievably good Indian food without a drop of oil. Yes, I just said that, Indian food without oil. Try this, please. And so this is not a new concept. Hippocrates said this, Maimonides said this, Thomas Edison also said this, that food should be medicine and nothing else, should really matter, unless absolutely needed. But within the realm of food, right, and that's why you never hear me, except for to show slides like this, I never use the word vegetarian or vegan, because, top row here is also vegan, right? I could just gorge on French fries, Oreo cookies, and use soda to wash them down, hence vegan, right? So this beautiful paper by Dr. Satija, they clearly showed that processed plant-based food is just as bad, if not more deleterious to cardiovascular health compared to animal products. So the other pillars of lifestyle medicine, extremely important, especially I see this within our Indian community, so much so my friends laugh at me on a regular basis that I'm kind of a sleep regimented guy. And then, by 9:30, 10 o'clock, I'm looking sleepy all the time, but it matters. It's especially within Indian community, Indian IT community, both here and back home, this is a disaster. Fitbit is actually about to publish a sleep tracking data from Indian IT personnel living in India and here. It should be interesting to watch that. And Gandhi himself said that each night when I go to sleep, I die. And the next morning when I wake up, I am reborn. So as far as cardiovascular outcomes are concerned, the sweet window is about 7 to 8 hours. And the frequency and the duration, right? How long you sleep and how frequently you wake up, both of them matter. So please make sleep a priority. And same thing with diabetes. Every risk factor, every disease that you look at and some of you, again, as physicians, we all went through this. Interesting data got published a couple of years ago, so much so that sleep duration and night shift is listed as a probable group 2A carcinogen. Physical activity, everybody these days is trained, wanting to be a marathoner. You don't have to be. It's actually, there's impressive cardiovascular data that keeps getting published that, because from an evolutionary point of view, humans are not programmed to run 26 miles. Okay, we never did. We never ran. It's our feet, our body, our heart, our circulatory system is not programmed to run 26 miles. So as you age, extremely important. If you really look, this is a beautiful study done. The majority of the benefit happens within the first 15 to 20 minutes. From a couch potato to get here, look at the delta drop. Majority of it happens in the first 20 minutes. After that, yeah, do it, but don't overdo it as you age. And smoking, do I really need to talk about smoking today in 2020? Everybody knows smoking is bad. Not really, because 5 years before I came to America, America was still debating whether we should ban smoking on a commercial airline or not. So it's worth still talking, because we still know a lot of people who are smoking, and there's no, the list will never end in terms of what diseases smoking causes, right? So extremely important. If you're smoking, yourself, friends, family, do whatever it takes to get them to quit. Alcohol in moderation. If you're drinking, please drink it because you like to do it. You like the company, or you're already invested in a whole closet full of wine bottles that you don't want to dump because you heard a crazy cardiologist talk to you on a weekday afternoon. But it is listed as a group 1 carcinogen. In the same category as alcohol, as smoking, as plutonium, as ionizing radiation, and as asbestos. Yes, the hazard ratio may not be identical, so maybe I'm exaggerating the risk, but the risk category fell it to be categorized as a group 1 carcinogen. So please, let's do ourselves a favor. If we drink alcohol, let's not drink it saying that it is good for us. It's not. And there's nothing as moderation, right? What is moderation? A bottle used to be moderation for me, but now, it's been almost 2 years since I gave up. Same thing with processed meats. Again, coming from India, we never ate processed meat, but I see a lot of even Indian kids, including my own a few years ago, we go to, local grocery stores and eat these deli meats. Again, processed meats are listed as group 1 carcinogens. And you may ask, why are we selling them? Or why are we selling them cigarettes in a pharmacy in America? So that's another debate, but please don't feed your children processed meats. And after all of this, we hear this. After all of this, we say this ourselves to our patients, our friends, our family, sometimes to ourselves as a physician, that doc, the disease runs in my family. Same words were also said by Dr. John Warner, who was the president of American Heart Association, who, while addressing the American Heart Association annual meeting in 2017, had a massive STEMI heart attack and almost died because they had to code him 2 or 3 times on the floor of the American Heart Association meeting. Airlifted to a nearby hospital, had 2 stents in the LAD, and subsequently he gave a message that he said, there are no old men in my family. Everybody's life has been cut short by cardiovascular disease. I believe the people in this room have the power, right, and even a duty to change that, right? This is what he made a play. So what I looked at when I heard this, wow, let's take a look at this. So using polygenic risk scores, we can risk stratify now, right? You can actually send a 23andMe and find out what your potential risk of cardiovascular disease is. So 3 large databases, and what they concluded was that if you live even a halfway decent healthy lifestyle of not smoking, BMI of less than 30, physical activity of 30 minutes once a week, and adherence to at least half of the healthy eating patterns. So it's an extremely weak definition of a healthy lifestyle, so weak that I would not even allow this near my kids. So even by that weak definition, even with high genetic risk, your risk of cardiac events can be lowered by 50%. So my argument has always been that one, it is our dinner, not DNA. And even if our fate or cardiovascular or health related fate is written, this is only for polygenic inheritance, not for, cystic fibrosis and that kind of stuff, right? If it is written in our genes, I truly believe that it is written in our pencil. Our genome is written in pencil. We can change it, or at least we can change the expression of it. So to make all of this happen, I don't need to preach to an Indian audience the power of mindfulness. But the power of mindfulness is not necessarily about somehow going back and coming back with a halo and a rosary in your hand. That could be one of the approaches, but more practical is that why go to bed taking a statin and not eat healthy? Why go to bed taking a blood pressure medication and wake up eating, extremely processed food, right? And stress, extremely important. Again, a group of physicians I'm talking to, but there are a lot of tools that are currently available. So again, stress is related to almost all chronic diseases. And I want to spend some time on this, is that when we change this, be it, predominantly I'm talking about diet and plant-based diet here, but to be mindful is to adopt a beginner's mind. And that worked for me, is that, hey, I don't know anything about this, but the practice of it or the science of it, and be non-judgmental for yourselves and your friends and your family. And be patient, because these things take a long time. Because if we want to ask ourselves, our friends, family, and patients to undo a lifetime worth of habits, they're not going to happen in a vacuum. And be accepting of failures, and be non-striving. This is not a competition. This is not a competition. This certainly is not a competition to weight loss, because life is not a competition to fit in a thinner casket. And trust yourself and be honest to yourself. And when you fail at something, just let it go and start all over again. And then before you know that, the classic psychosocial concept of law of small gains, right? And we kind of talked about this. And optimism and living life with a sense of purpose. Beautiful paper in JAMA last year. Again, epidemiological stuff, but you can never randomize this kind of stuff, right? But people who live lives with a sense of purpose live longer. And here is, I think, is my last slide, is that I actually have this printed, and it is now displayed in the back of my office, where I used to have a huge teaching board. So everybody who walks into my office sees this, that a healthy lifestyle, by the previous definitions I showed in the previous slide, is that the risk of any chronic disease can be lowered by 78%. Diabetes by 93%, myocardial infarction by 81%, stroke by 50%, cancer by 36%. So this is an issue that can no longer wait. Preventing for ourselves, our friends and family back home, or anybody as physicians, because those of you who went through internal medicine, like Harrison said, no greater obligation can fall to the lot of a human being than that of to becoming a physician, right? So our moral reach for ourselves, our family, and our society is far larger than any other profession. And I say that with a lot of pride. So we have that moral responsibility to get the word out. So in an effort to get the word out, what we did here in Tampa, you can look this up, I founded a nonprofit organization to get the word out. So this is a nonprofit. We just got our 501c3 status at the federal level a couple of weeks ago. Look us up. And if there's anything you can do, you want to come give us a lecture, contribute in any way, please, look us up. This is just purely to get the word out to the community here in the US, and eventually, if we grow as an organization, take it back home. So that being said, I hope I got it done in time, and I will take any questions, or let's have a conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy, for this excellent presentation. And I would like to echo what Sridhar Basudevan has written in the chat box, that this talk was an excellent presentation with very important information provided with compassion and sincerity by a very knowledgeable, humble, and caring, wise interventional cardiologist. So it is surprising coming from an interventional cardiologist, because that's your bread and butter, to take care of the blockages. The information was urgent, practical, and applicable, and hopefully will improve quality of life to the listening audience and their families and patients they provide medical care. And that's what I said at the beginning of the talk also, that Indians are such a high risk, and we lose so many people at a young age, and we have to prevent it, not treat it when it happens. And I was tremendously impressed. Thanks for this relevant talk. And let's come to the questions. It's a very relevant question. If plant-based diet would be beneficial, then why don't we see reduced incidence of atherosclerotic disease in vegetarian communities in India, like Gujaratis, Brahmins, etc.? This question comes from Dr. Sujit Purnam.
Okay, that's a very good question, Dr. Purnam. Because I showed one of the slides. So there is some data in terms of cardiac events and lowering of risk factors. One of the trials that you want to look up, there's a paper called Mount Abu Open Heart Trial. And I'm giving a specific answer because there are similar trials in the US also, but they're also coming. It's actually by a doctor named Satish Gupta, very seasoned researcher. And what they looked at was that they looked at people with established coronary disease, and they taught them mindfulness, Raja Yoga meditation, and how to cook vegetarian diets and how to properly walk for half an hour to 45 minutes a day. And they clearly showed reduction in cardiovascular events. And there is some, kind of a borderline data on reversal of atherosclerosis, reversal on angiography, but we really don't care for, what happens in the lumen, because we care for cardiovascular events. And the question, so the diet in India, again, some of you, I may have, at the risk of offending some of you, I'm going to say, let's be honest ourselves, right? That is, the way to change is accepting that we have a problem. Otherwise, we're not going to go anywhere. So our vegetarian diet is not a vegetarian diet. It is vegetarian, but it is not a healthy vegetarian diet. Come on, Gujarati food. I have very good Gujarati friends. I have a Gujarati friend who my wife calls a brother. So it's very oily, it's very salty, and then we eat a lot of processed, refined carbohydrates. And then we eat a lot of saturated fat in terms of ghee, right? And then not to mention the amount of salt. Again, it's without even knowing, culturally, it got part of our, I come from Hyderabad, South India. You just wake up and you want to eat healthy. And before you know, a little couple of pieces of mango chutney, that's it. You're done with the salt content for the day, especially if you're dealing with hypertension. So that's why we don't use the word, at least in the circles of lifestyle medicine, we use the concept of whole food plant-based diet. How many of us eat breakfast like our grandfathers used to eat, right? Actually, channa, boiled channa with some onions and some lime and some black pepper, right? How many of you are we eating? I changed my breakfast. I eat that food for breakfast. I eat broccoli for breakfast. I eat steamed spinach for breakfast. I eat boiled lentils for breakfast. I eat a bowl of dal for breakfast sometimes, because that is real food. So that's an important point. So our Indian vegetarianism is not true vegetarianism. It is ultra processed refined food with a lot of sugars.
So is it safe to say that vegetarians have lower incidence of heart disease compared to non-vegetarians, but the vegetarians are compromised by eating a lot of gulab jamun and jalebi, which is refined sugar and processed saturated fats?
Absolutely. And refined sugar. And the number one problem in India is the amount of vegetable oil, the amount of fat that we eat in terms of vegetable oils, refined sugars, and refined carbohydrates. How many of us are still eating yams, steamed yams for breakfast or snacks, steamed sweet potatoes? We used to eat that way. I used to eat that way as a kid. Yeah, we no longer eat that anymore. On top of that, not to mention the pizzas and burgers that now began, and sodas that became a part of Indian living now.
There are a couple of questions on dairy products, like a question from Dr. Anupama Gotimukula, who is our president-elect, that Indians eat yogurt in our daily meals. Yes. And what's your comment on dairy products in our diet? And I will combine this question with a question from Dr. Himanjini Shah, who says, what are your thoughts on dairy products as compared to a vegan diet?
Yeah, so again, we can actually, that would be a great talk. And we get very sensitive with dairy. It's not because for us, culturally, dairy is not just food, right? Dairy is a part of our life. Dairy is a part of our religion. Dairy is a part of our worship. So when a crazy guy like me comes and says, yeah, I've stopped dairy, everybody's throwing bombs at me, right? So, but there's another, I'll be honest with you, I grew up on a dairy farm. My father was a dairy farmer for a long time, and I drank dairy like as it's going extinct. And the science of it, again, most of the data, there's one, Epic Oxford, I think Epic paper showed that people who eat dairy have less cardiovascular events. Wow, how is that possible? Right? Dairy, especially, in India now it's big deal, but in either in terms of paneer or now in terms of American version of cheese, right? There's a very high concentration of saturated fat, right? And you compare that to people who don't eat any of those foods. So that's one reason as to why not to eat it. But this paper showed that people who eat dairy actually have less event rate. And it turns out they have less event rate because they're not dying of malnutrition. Because for a lot of children in India, dairy is a source of nutrition. And when I was a kid, we used to actually get these little American-made milk cups fed in our schools. So once you adjust that factor of that you get enough nutrition from other sources, there's really no biological need. I'm not going to say it's unnatural, because there's all of our existence is unnatural. We are not evolutionarily programmed to be on a Zoom call. So it's not, it's not biological for humans to be drinking the milk of another mammal, right? Especially when in one hand, we worship that mammal as mother on one hand, and we trap it in a shed and artificially impregnate it so we can drink its milk. So I'm segueing from science into morality and ethics, which probably not the right venue, but I want to plug that in because we do that. So again, the best way to do this is just to give it up for 2 months and see what happens. Don't let me dictate your practices. If you're dealing with high cholesterol, if you're dealing with asthma, if you're dealing with a skin rash, give up all dairy products, including ghee, and see what happens. So these things have to be very personal, and because we are so emotionally connected to dairy. And do you think it was easy for me to give up a bucket's load of Greek yogurt and my mom's Indian chicken curry? It was not easy.
Okay, there is a question from Tushar Patel. What are your thoughts on plant sterols and stenols and niacin products available over the counter to lower lipids, cholesterol?
Don't use it. Plant sterols and stenols are a big scam. Don't use them. Because human body is not designed. Evolutionarily, our receptors are antagonistic to absorbing plant sterols and stenols. Our literally gut enterocytes, they try to get rid of them. They're actually toxic to human cells. They crystallize much faster in the human cells than cholesterol. So yeah, please, don't. The best way to lower your cholesterol is to, again, it's going to sound crazy because the information this is one, don't eat cholesterol. And then you may say, well, dietary cholesterol is not linked to your serum cholesterol, which is partly true. But only way you're going to find out if your cholesterol is bothering you and you're ready to take, over-the-counter medications and go on 2 medications, give up all the dietary cholesterol and see what happens. And eat fiber like it's going extinct, including breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And unless you have a heterozygous variant for familial hyperlipidemia, your LDL will go down, your total cholesterol will go down. And as long as you're not eating simple refined carbohydrates, your triglycerides will also go down, and then it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, there is a question on that also. From Madhus, I thought fat is better than carbs for diabetes. If you control your calories, would it be safe?
I'm glad somebody asked me that question. So first of all, please, a humble plea, because again, I am not a nutrition scientist. I learned this on the go over the past 5 years. And like everybody else, I fell into the trap because think about it. So the person who asked the question said carbs and fats. When was the last time any one of you went to a grocery store and said, hey, today on my list, I'm going to buy 5 carbs, 6 fats, and 8 proteins? Do you shop like that for food? Then why do you fall for that trap? Why do you fall for that trap by scientists and researchers? We don't, right? There's no fat aisle in grocery stores. There's no protein aisle. So look at food as whole. So when I eat an avocado, am I eating fat? Am I eating other nutrients? So again, for example, one of my favorite foods is purple sweet potato, steamed purple sweet potato for breakfast, right? That technically is a carb, right? Eating white bread with right? Eating toasted white bread is also, is a carb. On one hand, people who eat predominantly purple sweet potatoes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner are some of the longest living people on the planet. You can look at any ethnicity across the entire human population. The healthiest and the longest living people consume about 60 to 70%, including me, of our calories from quote unquote carbs, except they come from real food, not processed carbs. So this notion that carbs are bad for you couldn't be farther from the truth. It's how the industry brainwashed us to sell a product or two. On both sides of the argument is to eat real whole food.
There are a lot of comments coming that it was a great learning session. And actually, I'll request the API leadership also to conduct more sessions on preventive aspects of disease, because everybody likes it. They want to be, we have so many seminars and webinars and CMEs on disease processes, but nothing to prevent it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I can, I don't know if Padmaja Patel is still on the call. She's the one who actually connected me with Anupama, and then Anupama connected me with Sudhakar, and then that's how we got to this evening. But Padmaja and I actually serve as board members for American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So one of the things that we did, in 2017, when I went to my first American College of Lifestyle Medicine, I'm listening to all these things: be mindful, eat a vegetarian food, do some yoga, and it's like, whoa. India has been saying this for thousands of years. How come we are not practicing it? So like literally in the hallways meeting, we founded, my wife and I and a couple of other physician friend of ours, we founded a WhatsApp group. And in that WhatsApp group, we have about 250 doctors, doctors of Indian origin from all over, literally every continent on the planet. And we communicate, argue, fight almost on a daily basis. And if API is interested, and there are yoga experts in there, there are oncologists in there, there are immunologists in there, who are all promoting the pillars of lifestyle medicine. So that way you get another flavor from an endocrinologist about this. Today you heard a cardiologist's rant, and one day you want to hear a nephrologist talk about the same thing. One day you want to hear a lifestyle medicine board certified and a plant-based doctor talking about endocrinology, nephrology, immunology. So we can make those arrangements through our group that we have, and they're all of Indian ancestry, and some of them are outside the US. And so we can make that happen. Yeah.
Thank you. And this question I get all the time. Probably people just want to have some justification that is alcohol in moderation is okay. What about if I drink 2 glasses of red wine? It increases my HDL, which is the good cholesterol, and prevents heart disease.
Good. So first of all, I want to say that, look, I was never a big drinker. And, all these questions I want to, because these are lifestyle changes, I want to connect with the story instead of kind of sounding across like I'm lecturing to a group of doctors, which I'm not. So I gave up. I gave up because it just didn't make any sense to me. And the benefit, quote unquote, the benefit of alcohol. And, those of us who, again, if you're into lipidology, and Dr. Gupta is, and he will tell you more than I do, is that we gave up on HDL. We no longer look at HDL as a good thing. We don't know enough about HDL. That's why increasing HDL is no longer a therapeutic target, be it via medications or be it via drugs, diet. It's no longer a therapeutic target. The things that we should worry about is our total cholesterol, and well, not even total cholesterol, your LDL and non-LDL. But the question is alcohol, again, define moderation. That's the key. So somebody, the person who asked the question, what is moderation? So psychologists looked into this. They took various behavior habits and questioned the society. And they concluded if people define moderation as whatever makes them happy.
Okay, so there are a couple of questions like Sanjay Gupta ji says, could we get the presentation? All slides had great information.
Yeah, I can, look, knowledge is the only, like the ancient Sanskrit shloka says, the knowledge is the only treasure that increases when you share. So I'd be happy to.
And how do we join your lifestyle WhatsApp group?
It's actually full, Send us any, again, shoot me an email or, I can, type my phone number. It's already, there are already 200, probably there's room for only 6 more people in there. This has been going on for about, WhatsApp takes about what, 236 people, right? That's the number for WhatsApp.
I think Kaushik, I think we can make a WhatsApp group with RP and you.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, you can make a WhatsApp group so with RP, and then, some of us could be a member of that.
They'll separate this group. So yeah.
Yeah, so that way we can have the line of communication going on, and a few of us from the Indian Society of Lifestyle Medicine group can be a part of that. So that way there is a crosstalk and some kind of a dialogue and similar presentations from different specialties going on. So that way we kind of spread the word. And again, if you really want to get into the details of formal training, I strongly encourage you to look into the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. Become a member, take a board exam, and then try to come to the next meeting in Dallas. It's fun. I think look, all of us been to so many medical meetings. Once you come to American College of Lifestyle Medicine meeting, you'll actually return to your practice reformed and actually, wow, especially in the era of where everybody's feeling about burnt out, you actually will find that passion. Wow, you know what? I want to reinvent myself to practice medicine a little differently.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. I mean, we are past our time, but still over 100 people are still listening to you on the Zoom and also on the Facebook Live. And I would ask Dr. Anupama Gotumukula to give a vote of thanks.
Thank you, Kaushik. It was very interesting to connect to you and Padmaja. And I thought this is what we need right now. So that's something we are lacking in our what we preach to our patients. So it's both preventive and also it's also kind of treating us our patients. It's educating the patients.
Absolutely.
So today I have all my family in this call. I had my husband, my daughter, my sister. Everybody is in this call, so they are listening to you, and it's wonderful to connect to you. And we feel like we are illiterates actually in terms of what we are eating daily. I feel like I'm illiterate, so learned some things from you, and you motivated us with much more things we have to learn about. And thanks for giving your time to API today. And we truly appreciate, and hopefully a lot of members in this group were motivated with your talk today, and hopefully we'll join the lifestyle medicine. We'll become members of lifestyle medicine. And I'm planning after RP to
Sure.
take the course.
And there are a lot of resources. Once you go to the website, there are a lot of resources for personal help and professional enhancement, and also patient education materials that you can actually print and take it. So the college has done an amazing job of putting it together for physician, professional, and patient resources. Yeah, I would strongly encourage people to look into that website.
Since I connected to you, I started doing this plant-based diet. Okay, so I lost 1.5 pounds now. Okay, so this is a very good change. I'm watching myself.
Yeah,
unless I practice, I don't want to teach. So.
Yeah. So, but one of the things I'm going to urge all of you and all of us is to don't make weight loss as your primary goal, because we know this, right? The minute we want to do weight loss program, next morning our stress went up, because we stigmatize this. That's why I kind of passingly mentioned life is not a contest about fitting in a thinner casket, right? We can lose weight. I can go to India and catch typhoid and lose weight. Right. So the key is to, how not to meet a guy like me in the cardiac cath lab, or how not to end up in a dialysis unit, because at the end of the day, we are all human. These things are going to happen to us.
Thank you. Thanks for enlightening us. And thank you so much, and have a good night.
Absolutely. Stay safe, everyone. Pleasure to again. Thank you.
Session. And please attend RP sessions, and please spread the word. We like to have more and more attendance, and we're trying our best to get the best speakers for through RP, and you're all ambassadors of RP, and I think every one of you have to spread the word to attend these kind of talks. And thanks a lot, Kaushik, again once more.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, Prabhakar, everybody. Nice meeting you. Thanks again for the opportunity. We'll definitely do more.
Thank you.